that's impressive. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Digital Festival. And I hope that my slide comes up. Yay, good. So, hello, everyone. So Susan said it all. I'm Margarita, and I'm leading the Vision for Robotics lab, where we are trying to develop the visual perception of robots. So to put this simply, we're trying to teach robots to see. I hope this works. Yay, good. So we are inspired by the fact that there are many stunning examples of visual perception in nature. So have a look at this one. Look at these birds, how they fly together without crashing into each other, and they coordinate with each other to create these beautiful formations. Now, if we really want robots to be around us and interact in the same space as us, we also want them to understand their workspace and be able to interact with it in a similar way. So, again, Susan gave a great introduction. We have this saying that one picture is 1,000 words. And indeed, images tell us a lot about the situation. In fact, vision for humans is our most powerful sense in understanding how to interact with the world around us. So at the Vision for Robotics lab, as the name suggests, we're trying to teach robots to see in a bid to boost their intelligence. Now, there are many tasks out there where automation can make a real difference, whether one wants to digitize an archaeological structure or have a robotic team to help with certain rescue, inspect a part of infrastructure, or monitor crops. Then computer vision and robotics have a lot to offer and can have a great impact. Now, the marriage of these two disciplines has drawn quite some attention in the past 2 decades or so, and at the heart of this marriage have been some key breakthroughs. For example, our understanding about how to compute the motion of a camera in 3D space while it is moving in real time. And some of these breakthroughs have really taken us much forward. I would like to think that this is one example that you see here. This is the time where we demonstrated that it is possible to automate the flight of a small aircraft, this small or this big, by using one camera and one inertial sensor on board the aircraft itself. So you'll see here a little bit what kind of maps we're building. They're very different from Google Maps. So we have point clouds, and we have the poses of the camera that we keep forgetting always because we cannot really keep all of the computation on board. But still, this was a mini breakthrough, I would think. The code is open source, and people can use it, and people have been using it, and we're very proud of that. So, teaching robots to see, how far along are we? Well, I have to say that in order to capture videos like that, we had to go on site 2 days beforehand to make sure that we calibrate for the particular light, to calibrate for the communication. So there's many, many things that we still need to work on. In particular, we would like to be able to track faster motion, have the ability to deal with larger scales, richer maps. We want our algorithms to be more robust, and we want them to perform at less computation. So basically, we want a bit of everything. So if I am to summarize all of this in one point, we would really like to handle larger amounts of data more effectively. And in robotics, in contrast to computer vision, we constantly have to balance out these two competing goals, precision versus efficiency. And every algorithm has its own different balance. Now, from teaching robots to see to teaching drones to see, we have some additional properties and challenges to consider. First of all, we love to work with drones. Why? Because they're lightweight and they're safer than larger robots to work with. For me, for my students who are outside, you can go and quiz them. But that also means that they have these platforms have more limited resources on board. So you cannot really port all of the sensors and all of the computation units that you could put on a car. Now, another reason why we love to work with drones is that they're fast and agile. And we really want to be able to use this agility. So drones can really take off and gather the 3D, gather the overview of the area in milliseconds probably, and it's something unique for drones that other robots cannot do. But in order to be able to use this agility, then we really need fast algorithms able to compute this motion. And in case you thought that maybe actually drones can stop and wait for an algorithm to complete, well, they cannot. It's not really the same like a car. You could drive a little bit, stop, think about all the data you had to process, and then move on. For drones, stopping means switching your propellers off and falling on the ground, if not onto something or someone. We don't want that. And if we are to talk about autonomy, then we really need to touch also on the fact that battery is a scarce resource, and that communication bandwidth is not to be relied upon. So it is for this reason that we constantly try to run all the flight-critical tasks on board the drone itself. We try not to rely to a link to a ground station to tell us whether we're about to crash, because maybe that, when that message is coming back, maybe it's too late for the drone. Right, this brings me to the vision of what we would like to do in the lab. We would like to have a team of robots, let's say small aircraft, that they're equipped with some kind of vision sensors, let's say cameras for now. We would like to develop their visual perception and intelligence that will enable them, first of all, as individuals, to navigate in space autonomously, and then collaborate in a team to do a useful task together. For example, to build together a common map of their workspace or a reconstruction of their workspace. Now, I hope I have convinced you that drones are some of the most difficult platforms to work with. So this is really what I advocate. They're some of the most difficult platforms to work with for robotic perception, for visual perception in particular. So we argue that if we are able to develop these capabilities for drones, then their extension to other types of platforms with similar sensing capabilities or restrictions can be straightforward. But before we are able to realize this vision, we have three main challenges to address, and these also correspond to the three main research themes in the lab. I'm going to go over them and also give you a taste of one or two works of how we're trying to approach these challenges. So challenge number one is, how do we robustly localize and map the environment? So this really forms the backbone of the awareness of space for a robot. So the robot takes off and really knows nothing about its workspace. That's why we first of all need to build a map, but we also need to localize in it. So often this is called the chicken and egg problem. And we have many, many ways of dealing with this, but they are not always robust. So we need to build the robustness against common problems such as changes of light. As you move from indoors to outdoors, what do you do in this couple of frames that your camera saturates and it's really white? And also to different weather conditions. Now, one way we're dealing with this is via sensor fusion. So here you're looking at an example where an aircraft is fusing visual, inertial, and GPS information to come up with a more refined estimate about where it is in the world that it's creating, in the map that it's creating in real time. Now, GPS is not always available or reliable. For example, here, indoors, or in narrow streets, like this one in downtown Zurich. Anyone can recognize which street this is? Yeah, Renweg, thank you. So here the robot is navigating down a straight street. So Renweg is a straight street, for those who don't know. And it's constantly estimating how it thinks it's moving, this red line. And also it's estimating its own map, so these point clouds that you see. Now, it quickly becomes evident that these estimates drift with time, and they really deviate from reality. So in cases like this, we need to run what we call place recognition to really help the robot recognize where it's instances that it's coming back to a location where it has been to before. And we do that in a very similar way that we query images in a Google database. So essentially, we take the current image and query it back in the database that we have been building since the beginning of the mission of the robot. Now, problems can arise because different places can appear to be the same. The same place can appear to be different between visits, and here we start to play with the problems of visual perception, right? And also, the same place can appear very different if you visit it at a different time of day, night, or different season. So trust me, this is the same place, but a different season. So even for humans, it's very hard to figure this one out. But on top of that, as if that was not enough, when you're really visiting a place using a drone, then you also need to deal with the large viewpoint changes that occur. And we really need to be able to say that that place is the same as that place, despite that that image is very different. Now, it's very hard to deal with all of these challenges at once, and I haven't seen a system that is able to tackle everything at once. So what we usually do, we take the big problem and we split it down into smaller problems until they're mature enough, and then we bring them together. So one way we're dealing with this, one way we're dealing with viewpoint changes, is by taking the current view and transforming it into an orthophoto. So really, an orthophoto is a projection of what that scene would look like from an upright view, which is what you see here on the bottom. What's cool about that? Well, what's cool about that is that when I'm querying the current image to the database of orthophotos, I create a much simpler problem for place recognition to distinguish whether it's coming back to the same place or not. But if we have to recognize places that have experienced very extreme changes in illumination or in seasons, then today in the lab we rely on deep learning techniques to do that. So here you're looking at the system in action that has been trained on thousands of images of stationary webcams around the world, and it has learned what makes a place distinctive despite the time of day and despite the season. So you can see that if I query that current view, it comes up with the best match in the database that is, I hope you agree, it's the same place, but from a different time of day or a different season. There's also a demo outside. You can test yourself against this system. I think some of you have done it already. Sometimes we win, sometimes it wins, but for sure it's always faster. Now, there's a big hype in deep learning these days, in computer vision especially, and I feel I have to say that this is not a system that works perfectly for all kinds of scenery. But I will leave that hanging. If anyone is interested to know failure cases, can come and tell me. Right, this brings me to the second challenge. So the second challenge is to build a denser scene representation, a richer scene representation. Why? Because if we want our robots to be able to interact with their environment, for example, to reach out and grasp an object, or to avoid obstacles while flying, then we need them to build this, at least local, dense representation of the scene. So how useful would it be if we had a drone that is intelligent enough to override the pilot's commands in cases where he or she is driving it into a wall? So something like semi-autonomous driving, but for drones. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not what's happening here. Here, you're just looking at the very local scene reconstruction from a single camera. But that's the dream. That's where we would like to go. Now, dense mapping is also useful for autonomy in general. So here you will be looking at an example where the drone takes off, knows nothing about its scene, and it has a goal somewhere there, where my face is, outside the slide, which acts like a magnet. And then as the drone starts perceiving its world, it starts carving out this 3D octomap that you're looking at here. And it says, right, I cannot really go straight on and go and find that goal, follow the magnetic force that takes me to the goal. So instead, I have to keep replanning on the go by building and updating the map of what it is that I'm looking at. So this is really a reactive planning, figuring out where you have obstacles, but still trying to circumvent them such that you reach the goal. And finally, we have the third challenge. Imagine you have these very clever individuals, agents moving in space. How do we get them collaborate with each other to do something useful? For example, to build a common map of their workspace, which is what you're looking here. So we have two drones that they take off, they know nothing of each other, but as soon as they take off, they each start individually mapping their world, and they dump all that information down to a ground station, a laptop, and that laptop starts processing all of that information and keeps it as a kind of bookkeeping. And then if it recognizes that these two drones are actually at the same place, it informs them, hey, you guys are actually at the same place. Or if another agent is going to a place where some other agents have been to before, it sends it a portion of the map. Again, you can see this demo outside again as well. And it's exactly this system that we ported on this demo here, where you're looking at a drone and a ground robot. They each have one camera mounted on them. Of course, they're mounted such that they will experience view overlap. And then that's what we use to build a common map of their workspace, which is, again, advocating that what we do does not necessarily need to be applied on drones, but we use drones as some of the most challenging platforms to work with. Right, so with these three challenges, we aim to teach robots to see and collaborate, because we believe that this is what we really need to revolutionize the way that we perceive robotics today. And I leave you with this thought. As robots start to become more autonomous and more aware of their workspace, which is really what we wanted, right? They promise to become a wonderful tool. They promise to transform our lives. And this transformation, I think, and I hope, it can be wonderful, but we need to understand and guide its path together. Thank you very much.